Thank you everyone for being here. We're really excited. The theme today is going to be realizing untapped media value with retail media. I'm Renee Caceres. I am with Firework, and I lead retail media, so strategy, monetization of that commerce media. And we have a really great panel today. I'm going to let Len kick it off with introductions.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. Hi, guys. Len Polhemus. I'm part of IBM Consulting. I'm a global partner focused on data-driven transformation for customer.
Sean Cheyney. I head up global retailer acquisition for Citrus and Epsilon.
And I'm Brett Wachter. I'm with IBM Consulting as well. I have responsibility for our marketing transformation services in EMEA and our global retail media offering.
Perfect. And actually, Brett, I'm going to kick it off with you. What is retail media to you, and who's doing it well?
Okay, so first of all, retail media is all of a sudden a $100 billion business that went from 0 to 100 billion just over the course of something like the last 5 years, although it's been around for a little bit longer than that. And then secondly, it's a nesting doll. It's a collection of capabilities, a collection of processes, a collection of opportunities for an organization to pivot itself into being able to extract value out of the guts of the organization, but needs to be done in a way where you're actually able to introduce new business processes and essentially pivot your business model into something that's less about retail e-commerce and more about an actual publishing business model. So.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I would add into that it also gives the opportunity for the retailer and their brands to connect in a different way. So historically, when retailers and brands have worked together, it's really the retailer looking at the brand as their vendor. And now with retail media, the script has flipped, and retailers are looking at the brand as an advertising partner. I was listening to somebody yesterday from Nectar 360, and they were talking about it really, the nature of the relationship has changed. It becomes who buys lunch, where in the past it was the vendor buying for the retailer, and now it's completely flipped in the retail and media environments, where it's the retailer buying lunch for the brand.
Awesome. I would just add here, for me, this is the continuation of a retailer's digital transformation. And there's this unique storm that happened, right? COVID happened. It drove a lot of customers, took them to online platforms, your e-commerce platforms, your apps. You have this large audience showing up. And at the same time, you have all of these things that are going on in the advertising world, cookies going away, it being hard to measure ROI on ad spend. And so a unique storm that happened here to drive retail media networks. I think the other piece I heard to talk over at Influential Beach is, you look at a retailer, profit margin 4 to 5%. You look at media, you're in the 50 to 90% margin. So really unique opportunity from a revenue upside.
Perfect. Sean, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities as competition ramps? Because it's everywhere. Like every other week, there's a new RMN.
So the biggest challenge really for retailers and, for everybody in the ecosystem, for brands, agencies, and the retailer is education. It's understanding what retail media is and what it isn't, even more importantly. Recently, we had a bank talk to us and said, we want to do retail media. I said, well, that's nice. What you want to do is monetize. It's a little bit different than retail media, although some of the elements may be the same. So it's really education, and it's the understanding that retailers need to have when they look at some of the retailers that have been doing this for a long time, like Walmart, especially in the US, Target with Roundel, Amazon, looking at them and saying, we need to do all of that, and we need to do it now. But that's not where those companies started. It was a process. It was a journey. And so for retailers to better understand that they're not going to be where Amazon is on day one, but they can get there. It's just a journey, and not to bite off more than they can chew. For brands and their agencies, it's picking your best bets, spreading the wealth a little bit, understanding what works, and then writing that and allocating those dollars toward what works and where the relationship can be built, not only with the retailer, but also with their customers.
Well-performing media dollars are sticky. So if you are able to get out in front and capture the market, you're going to be in position to be able to grow as the market grows. And as I mentioned before, this is a market that's growing 30 to 50% a year now at this point. If you're the biggest challenge to in the retail media space is being out in front to be able to capture those dollars and being able to do just what you were talking about, Sean, mature your whole ecosystem to the point where it's a fully functioning, operable ecosystem as quickly as possible. And while it is a journey, there are ways to be able to get out in front of it. If you can go and take a look at other organizations that have got long-standing publishing business models that you can borrow from, and that's really, I think, the big trick to being able to take advantage of the market.
So, Brett, I'm going to add to that a little bit and take a slightly different perspective. Biggest challenge here is this is not just a tech problem. So you have a retailer that says, I want to be a retail media network, or I want to add that in. As most of you know, IBM bought the weather company a while back. Great sign behind us. We're all talking about the weather. But there's a lot of things that go along with this stack, right? Not just a supply-side platform and connect that to demand-side. There's a lot of human touch involved with this too. How are you setting up media campaigns? How are you trafficking them? How are you doing billing and invoicing? How are you doing reporting out of this? It's not just a tech solution that needs to go in, and a lot of retailers don't have these muscles. And so it's the idea of partnering with someone, working with someone who has this experience that's bringing the tech as well as the expertise to help get these things off the ground.
It's funny when you think about that. It's all the processes that are involved that sit behind the business. You have some retailers that look at it and say, how hard can this be? We just throw a couple banner ads up on the website and we're done. But there's more to it. If they treat it like a business and not a hobby, then they need to take the same rigor they would across the rest of their business.
Yeah, it's a full business model evolution. Ultimately, you're no longer a retail e-commerce organization operating in a B2C environment. You're now in a B2B environment. You have to, as you were mentioning, you have to change the kinds of relationships that you have with your suppliers. I love the analogy of who's buying the lunch. And you have to essentially operationalize all of that. It's not just having the technology in place. It's also having all of the ad ops processes in place, being able to make sure that you can establish the attribution reporting, the traceability back to all of the media units that have been placed when you're sending your invoices back out to your clients. And then those client relationships all have to be managed in the same fashion that any B2B organization manages their client relationships. And to Len's point, it's just not a muscle that exists inside of traditional B2C retail organizations.
I guess said a different way and kind of doubling down on that. Build versus partner versus buy. What are your guys' opinions, right? Because again, there are so many RMNs popping up. How do you differentiate yourself? Where do you dive in and where do you ask for help?
Well, not everybody is Amazon and can build their own stack. In fact, I'd say the retailers that can successfully build their own stack and the processes and everything that goes into it is probably you can count on one hand globally, the ones that can do it well.
You mean spinning up an ad server doesn't get you to a retail media network?
It does not. And even just spinning up some of the components as well. There are so many good platforms out there, and coming from one that I consider top-notch as well at Citrus, there are so many good platforms out there that there's no need anymore, especially when it comes to ad serving or a lot of the components. There's a lot of customizations that can be done, and it's a matter of taking best in breed, bringing those together to make a program uniquely yours, which is what all the retailers are looking to do. The reason they look to buy or the reason they look to build is not necessarily because they're excited about building, maybe their engineers are, but it's because they look at it and they say, we need something that's uniquely ours. We need something that talks to our brand, talks to our value proposition. And it's a matter for, they just need to understand they can get that from some of the other technologies that are out there. They don't have to build everything themselves. And I would say they're going to do themselves more harm than good in almost all cases to try to build something, because they're going to build something that's right now, and retail media is moving so fast that it's not going to be in the right place when it's finally built.
Yep. Build your sources of differentiation and customer satisfaction. And for most retailers, your sources of differentiation are within the insights that you have and the kind of segments and the kind of audiences that you can deliver to your buyers. If you are a grocer or if you're an FMCG, you have completely different buyers and buying models than if you're a department store and you're selling, slower moving, longer cycle time goods. And so that's the opportunity from a build perspective is to plow your investment into the insights that you're able to surface up. And then you can have an actual marketable product when you have a platform that's there to be able to deliver the advertising units and make sure that the segments that you're offering are attached to them.
I'll pile on here again. So we're out with build. Most people are not doing build, but between partner and buy, right? The idea of partnering, finding a partner who has experience running a publisher, finding a partner who has experience with retail media networks, really important. Also finding a partner who understands the tech really well. So this means agile development. It means speed to value quickly. Finding somebody who's focused on your business, helping you not only get this retail media network off the ground, but thinking about it in the context of the larger relationship that you have with the customers as this retailer, right? Nobody's switching from not being a retailer anymore to just being a publisher. And so can you put the CX with the data together to drive an overall differentiated experience?
But that partnership also extends just beyond the hard product, beyond what you would build, also to strategy as well. That's it's one of the areas in retail media that is really lacking. And there are a lot of companies that have pride and say, I can just go out and do it, versus taking the opportunity to partner and get strategic guidance from companies that have done it before, that are doing it now, that can help them leapfrog either their competition or leapfrog where they would otherwise be.
Yeah, I think as you start to see the reporting models evolve and the ability for organizations to start to get a better understanding of what is coming back from their media spend, you're going to start to see the strategy side of it really start to amplify, because it's better dollars to spend now than in traditional digital channels, because of the fact that you can get access to that first-party data and you're close to the transaction. But when you start to see your dollars being spent across multiple retail media networks, you're going to then start to say, okay, which one is going to be performing best? And none of them are going to be able to give you a straight answer when they're all competing with one another.
And I think there's a lot of talk in market about the data standardization. Should there be any? If there is, what does it look like? I think that's a whole other topic that we probably don't have enough time for. But in your opinions individually, what is the gold standard? What would you like to see it be? To your point, to be able to kind of compare against, to see who's doing the best. Where should your money go?
Well, I think we can all agree the cookie is going away, and that definitely is a direction that everybody should be moving away from. Any sort of personalized or universal IDs at the person level is going to be the way to go, and something that can be flexible, that can flex to each retailer's unique value. A grocer is going to have different customers and different customer behavior than a mass merchant, for example, or a consumer electronics store. So it's a matter of being able to take that data in, having some standardization, at least around the framework, and then have the flexibility still to be able to adjust that to whatever highlights the retailer's uniqueness.
So love the idea around identity, all right, having a unique identifier that's standardized. Take a different approach of standardized KPIs. So what we see across retail media networks is lots of different ways of potentially calculating return on ad spend or how they're looking at these core KPIs. Makes it hard for brands to allocate those dollars. So the more standardization that we get in the KPIs means you remove a lot of that friction in terms of brands allocating to your retail media network, which is crucial to getting that off the ground, getting the dollars flowing your direction.
Perfect. I think we have 5 minutes. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I would say, are there any questions from the audience before we continue? Time for rosé. I got it. Okay. We'll wrap it up pretty quick. I'm just going to ask you each individually, I guess, what is the one thing that you want everyone to walk away with coming out of this conversation from your own personal perspectives, seeing as how it's quite varied, your backgrounds and where you're at.
You want me to start?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's start with
I'm going to go with making sure you maintain that trust. Retailers have spent a lot of time building trust with their customers. if you look at kind of who gave the roadmap to this, these walled gardens, they built this, they built this brand, they built trust with customers, and then they started, okay, how do I leverage the first party data that I have? How do I start, using this to monetize from an advertising perspective? How do I think about, closed loop attribution? There's a great roadmap that's been presented. For me, this is not just about launching a publisher. It's about having a differentiated customer experience, thinking about, okay, how does this fit into my overall retail strategy? It's a piece of the business. And so it's not about maximizing, visits to the site, or maximizing impressions, maximizing revenue on the publishing side. It's about the overall experience that you're driving for your customers.
I would say be careful who you listen to. Early in the days of social, you had all these companies rising up. Everybody was a guru in social, and it became sort of a joke, almost a meme, because everybody said they knew everything about social and they knew nothing. And so it's be careful who you're listening to when you have something like retail media that grows so quickly. There are new companies that do completely separate things from retail media that say, oh, we need to jump into this, where they have no background. They can't provide the strategic guidance. And so I would focus on those, especially in your industry, your retail industry, your vertical, where companies have had success and where companies lend a lot to the marketplace, both from a technology and from a services perspective and from data. Those are the ones who are going to be your best bet in terms of who to listen to.
I've been listening to a lot of people this week talk about AI and generative AI, and I'm wondering whether I need to be careful of who it is that I'm listening to on that topic, too. From my perspective, the takeaway is you're building an entirely separate business model. It's not a case where your people are going to be used to the kind of business processes that need to be in place to be able to run this kind of an organization, this kind of a company, essentially. I know people personally who have had positions in retail merchandising who managed to end up moving to positions where they were responsible for the client relationships in the retail media organization. And that didn't work out very well because of the who's buying the lunch question. And they're not used to having to be the person who's actually doing the selling when it comes to that. And that's just one example of how different it is to actually run this kind of a business. Beyond the fact that it's also, it's measured in entirely different ways. The product is entirely different. The distribution is entirely different. And, every aspect of running the business is completely different. And so when you go back to be careful who you listen to, I'd listen to people who run publishing businesses. I'd listen to people who have been there and done that for years and years, actually executing on this kind of solution where they have mastered the advertising operations, they have mastered the media order management capabilities, they have mastered all of the ability to actually get product created, innovate around it, and then be able to make sure that it's put into the marketplaces effectively. So that's where my head would be at.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience. We appreciate your time. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Appreciate it.